Captain Do-hyun Kim woke up with a gasp. Cold air rushed into his lungs as the cryopod opened with a hiss. Red lights flashed overhead. The alarm meant only one thing. Something unknown was approaching Earth. "Captain Kim, please report to command." "Center immediately," said a calm computer voice. Do-hyun's muscles ached as he pulled himself out of the pod. He had been asleep for only 2 months of his 6-month rotation on the near-orbit defense station. An early wake-up was never good news. He dressed quickly in his blue uniform and hurried through the curved hallways of the space station. Other crew members rushed past him, their faces tight with worry. Lieutenant Taiho Choi waited for him at the command center door. "Sir, you need to see this right away." The main screen showed a massive object moving toward Earth. It was shaped like an arrow and darker than the space around it. Do-hyun felt his mouth go dry. "What is that thing?" he asked. "We don't know, sir," said Taiho. "It appeared beyond Neptune's orbit 3 days ago. It's moving fast, but it's slowing down. It will reach Earth orbit in about 12 hours. Do-hyun stared at the screen. The object was huge, almost 3 kilometers long according to the measurements. "Nothing made by humans was that big. Have we tried to contact it?" he asked. "Yes, sir. We've sent messages in all known formats, no response." Do-hyun nodded. "Call Dr. Park. We need her up here as soon as possible." Dr. Mina Park was enjoying her dinner when the call came. As the lead xenobiologist for the Global Defense Initiative, she knew that a middle-of-the-night call meant something big had happened. 6 hours later, she stood beside Captain Kim in the command center, watching the alien ship approach. "It's beautiful," she whispered. The ship had changed as it got closer to Earth. Its dark surface now showed patterns of light that moved like rivers of blue fire. It had slowed considerably and was now matching Earth's orbit perfectly. "Beautiful and terrifying," said Do-hyun. "We still don't know if it's friendly." The world's governments were in chaos. Military forces around the globe were on high alert. News channels showed nothing but the alien ship. Some people were panicking, while others celebrated in the streets, believing that first contact would change humanity forever. They were right about that part. For 7 days, the ship did nothing. It sat in orbit, silent and watchful. Earth sent hundreds of messages. World leaders made speeches welcoming the visitors. Scientists broadcast prime numbers and basic physics formulas. Some people even sent music and art. The ship remained silent. On the 8th day, something changed. A smaller craft separated from the main ship. It was about the size of a passenger airplane and shaped like a teardrop. "It's coming down," said Taiho, watching the radar. "Trajectory suggests it will land in the Pacific, about 500 kilometers from Hawaii." Do-hyun ordered his team to alert the Pacific Fleet. Within minutes, ships and aircraft surrounded the predicted landing area. Do-hyun and Mina boarded a fast transport plane to reach the site. Just as they were preparing to leave, all communication devices on the station started playing the same message. "We are the Vorax Collective. Your species has been identified as a potential threat to galactic stability. We have come to evaluate." The voice was perfectly clear, speaking in flawless English. It sounded neither male nor female, but definitely artificial. "That's not good," muttered Do-hyun. By the time they reached the Pacific landing site, the smaller ship had already settled on the water. It floated perfectly, looking like a giant metal teardrop reflecting the sun. Military ships formed a wide circle around it, their weapons ready. Do-hyun and Mina joined the command ship where they met Lieutenant Taiho, who had arrived earlier with the security team. "Any movement?" asked Do-hyun. "Nothing yet," said Taiho, "but our scanners show a single life form inside." As if on cue, a seam appeared in the side of the alien craft. It widened into a doorway, and a ramp extended to touch the water's surface. A figure appeared in the doorway. It walked down the ramp, stepping onto the water's surface as if it were solid ground. The figure then glided across the water toward the nearest human ship. "Let them approach," ordered Do-hyun, his heart pounding. The figure reached their ship and rose into the air, landing gently on the deck. Now they could see it clearly. It looked almost human. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But the similarities ended there. The skin had a faint blue tint and seemed to shimmer slightly in the sunlight. The face had features in roughly the right places, but the eyes were too large and reflected light like a cat's. The body was thin and moved with impossible grace, as if gravity affected it differently. "I am Counselor Jihan of the Vorax Collective," it said in that same perfect voice they had heard earlier. "I have come to determine if your species deserves to continue its development, or if containment measures are necessary." A heavy silence fell over the ship. "I am Captain Do-hyun Kim of Earth's Near-Orbit Defense," said Do-hyun, stepping forward. "What do you mean by containment?" The alien's face remained emotionless. "Your species has developed nuclear weapons and quantum computing within a single century. The rate of your technological advancement is concerning. Species that develop too quickly often destroy themselves or others. The collective prevents such outcomes." Dr. Mina Park moved closer. "And how do you prevent such outcomes?" Jihan turned those reflective eyes to her. "Through evaluation first. If a species proves too dangerous to itself or others, containment protocols are initiated. In some cases, this means limiting technological development. In extreme cases, it means ensuring the species cannot leave its planet." "And who gave you the right to make that decision?" asked Taiho, his hand resting on his weapon. "The right of survival," said Jihan simply. "The galaxy has seen many rising civilizations destroy themselves or wage devastating wars. The collective maintains balance." Do-hyun felt cold despite the warm Pacific air. "And how will you evaluate us?" "I will live among you for 1 Earth year," said Jihan. "I will observe your nations, your technologies, your cultures, and most importantly, your potential. At the end of that time, I will make my recommendation to the collective." Mina stepped forward. "And if we refuse to be evaluated?" For the first time, something like a smile appeared on Jihan's face. It wasn't reassuring. The ship above carries weapons that could sterilize your planet's surface in hours. There is no refusal. As the humans absorbed this information, Taiho slipped away to examine the alien craft more closely. What he discovered troubled him deeply. Parts of the interior, visible through the open doorway, seemed specifically designed for human use. Seats that would fit human bodies, controls that human hands could operate. It was as if they had studied humans extensively before arriving. When he returned, Jihan was explaining the terms of the evaluation to Do-hyun and the other officials who had gathered. "I require access to your major cities, research facilities, and decision-making centers," the alien was saying. "I will observe but not interfere unless necessary." "And what happens after your year is up?" asked Do-hyun. Jihan's face remained neutral. "I will either recommend your species for protection under the collective or for immediate containment. The choice will depend entirely on what I observe during my time here." As the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, casting golden light on the alien visitor, humans around the world received the news. They had 1 year to prove they deserved to exist freely, 1 year to convince Counselor Jihan that humanity was worth saving. 3 months had passed since Counselor Jihan arrived on Earth. The world had changed completely. Every nation was on its best behavior. Wars had stopped. Politicians spoke of unity and peace. Everyone wanted to show the alien visitor that humans deserved to live freely. Jihan traveled everywhere. One day he would be in New York, meeting with the United Nations. The next day he might appear in Tokyo, watching how humans built their cities. Then he would visit a small village in Africa, observing how people lived with less technology. Director Sun-Woo Kang watched all of this from his office in Seoul. As head of the Global Security Council created to handle the Vorax situation, he had to coordinate Jihan's visits and make sure everything went smoothly. "What do you think he's looking for?" Sun-Woo asked, turning to the woman by the window. Hae-yoon Lee was not a government official or a scientist. She was a linguist who studied how different cultures communicated. Sun-Woo had brought her in because someone needed to understand what Jihan really wanted. "He seems confused by things we take for granted," said Hyun. Yesterday, he spent 3 hours at a concert just listening to music. The day before, he visited an art museum and stared at each painting for exactly 45 seconds. Is that good or bad? Asked Sunwoo. Hyun shrugged. I don't know, but I think he's trying to understand things that don't make sense to him. Like why humans create art or music when it serves no practical purpose. At the same time, Lieutenant Taiho was still studying the small alien ship that had brought Jihan to Earth. The Vorax had allowed this as a show of good faith, though they had removed anything that might reveal their technology secrets. Taiho had been working on a section of the wall that had strange markings. At first, he thought they were just decorations, but the more he looked at them, the more familiar they seemed. Dr. Park, can you come see this? He called. Mina walked over and looked at the symbols Taiho was pointing to. That looks like Sumerian writing, she said, surprised. But that's impossible. Sumerian civilization existed about 5,000 years ago. What if the Vorax have been watching? As for that long? Asked Taiho. The thought made them both uncomfortable. How much did these aliens really know about humanity? And what else were they hiding? In Washington, D.C., Jihan was meeting with Captain Do-hyun. Since the aliens' arrival, Do-hyun had been appointed as the official human liaison to the Vorax. I have questions, said Jihan, his voice still perfectly even and emotionless. I'll answer if I can, said Do-hyun. Why do humans create fiction? Stories that are not true? Do-hyun hadn't expected this question. We enjoy imagining different possibilities. It helps us see the world in new ways. But it is inefficient to spend time on things that are not real, said Jihan. Not everything we do is about efficiency, explained Do-hyun. Sometimes we do things just because they make us happy or help us understand each other better. Jihan's large eyes blinked slowly. The concept of doing something without a clear purpose is difficult for me to understand. Before Do-hyun could respond, Jihan's communication device made a sound. The alien touched it and a hologram appeared. Another Vorax looked out at them. This one had darker skin and lines on its face that might have been age markers. Counselor, Jihan, your reports are concerning, said the new alien. You are spending too much time on irrelevant human activities. Commander Do-hyun, I am following standard evaluation protocols, said Jihan. The collective questions your methods. Human, art and entertainment are not relevant to the threat assessment. Do-hyun watched this exchange carefully. It was the first time he had seen another Vorax, and the first hint that there might be disagreement among them. I will adjust my observations, said Jihan. The hologram disappeared. Jihan turned back to Do-hyun. I must visit your military installations. Next, the collective is particularly concerned about your weapons development. That evening, Hyun was reviewing videos of Jihan's public appearances when she noticed something strange. The alien's movements were changing. When he first arrived, he moved with unnatural grace, as if gravity affected him differently. Now, his movements were becoming more human. She called Dr. Park immediately. I think something is happening to Jihan, said Hyun. He's starting to move like us, even use expressions like us. Mina had noticed this too. His neural patterns might be adapting to match human behavior. It could be a natural response to living among us. Or it could be deliberate, said Hyun. What if he's trying to understand us by becoming more like us? At a military base in Europe, Jihan watched as soldiers demonstrated Earth's most advanced weapon systems. None of them would impress the Vorax, who had technology far beyond human capabilities. But the demonstration was required for the evaluation. Your species developed nuclear weapons only 80 years ago, said Jihan. Now you have quantum targeting systems and orbital defense platforms. Your technological progress is unusually fast. The general giving the tour nodded proudly. Humans are good at solving problems. That is what concerns the collective, said Jihan. Species that develop too quickly often create problems they cannot solve. After the tour, Jihan requested a private meeting with Captain Do-hyun. I must share something with you, said the alien. The Vorax were not always as we are now. Do-hyun was surprised. This was the first time Jihan had volunteered information. About his own people? What do you mean, he asked. Long ago we were more like humans, we had strong emotions. We created art and music. We fought wars. Then we decided to change ourselves. We used technology to make our bodies stronger and our minds more logical. We removed the parts of ourselves that we saw as weaknesses. You got rid of your emotions? Asked Do-hyun, shocked. We optimized ourselves, said Ji-han. But now, something strange is happening. Being among humans is affecting me. I find myself curious about things that should not matter to me. Before Do-hyun could ask more questions, Ji-han's communication device activated again. This time, the message seemed to upset the alien, though his face showed little change. The main ship has detected unusual activity at your polar research stations, said Ji-han. Commander Daehyun believes you are hiding weapons development there. He wants to inspect those facilities personally. That's just scientific research, said Do-hyun quickly. Nothing dangerous. Nevertheless, Commander Daehyun will come to Earth tomorrow to see for himself. This is concerning. Why? Asked Do-hyun. Ji-han hesitated before answering. Commander Daehyun does not share my growing interest in human culture. He sees only potential threats, and he has the authority to overrule my evaluation if he finds evidence that supports his view. For the first time, Do-hyun saw what might have been fear in the alien's eyes. The next day, a second small ship detached from the main Vorax vessel and headed toward Earth. Unlike Ji-han's smooth teardrop-shaped craft, this one was angular and bristling with what looked like weapons. Director Sun-woo called an emergency meeting. We need to prepare for this new visitor. From what Ji-han has told Captain Kim, this Commander Daehyun is not friendly. Why send another evaluator? Asked Hyun. Doesn't the collective trust Ji-han? Maybe they've noticed the changes in him. Too, suggested Mina. Maybe they're worried he's becoming too sympathetic to humans. As they spoke, Ji-han entered the room. Everyone fell silent, wondering if he had heard them discussing him. Commander Daehyun is not coming as an additional evaluator, said Ji-han. He is coming to evaluate me. The human officials exchanged worried glances. What does that mean for us? Asked Sun-woo. It means, said Ji-han, his voice softer than usual, that your time to prove yourselves may be much shorter than 1 year. Commander Daehyun has recommended immediate containment of Earth 17 times in the past. He has never once voted to allow a developing species to continue freely. The room grew quiet as the implications sank in. Earth's fate now depended not just on impressing Ji-han, but on convincing the much more hostile Commander Daehyun that humans weren't a threat. And based on what they had just learned, that seemed almost impossible. Commander Daehyun's ship landed with none of the grace that Ji-han had shown. It came down hard on a military airfield, sending dust flying everywhere. When the door opened, the new alien stepped out with 4 robot guards. Commander Daehyun looked similar to Ji-han, but there were clear differences. His blue skin was darker and metal parts showed through in places. His movements were stiff and precise, like a machine trying to look alive. I am Commander Daehyun of the Vorax Collective, he announced to the waiting humans. I am here to review Counselor Ji-han's evaluation and conduct my own assessment. Captain Do-hyun stepped forward. Welcome to Earth, Commander. We have prepared. I do not require your preparations, interrupted Daehyun. I will examine your military capabilities and technological development. Nothing else is relevant. Ji-han, who stood nearby, spoke quietly. The evaluation protocol allows for cultural assessment as well. Daehyun turned his reflective eyes to Ji-han. Your methods have been questioned, Counselor. The collective believes you have been contaminated by extended contact with humans. Director Sun-woo watched this exchange with concern. Later, in a private meeting with Captain Do-hyun, Hyun, and Dr. Park, he voiced his fears. This new alien doesn't care about our culture or our achievements, said Sun-woo. He's only looking for reasons to label us as dangerous. Ji-han has changed since he came here, said Mina. I've been monitoring his biological readings. His brain patterns are becoming more like ours. Is that good or bad? Asked Do-hyun. Good for us, maybe, said Hyun. but bad for him, according to his people. While Commander Daehyun inspected military bases and research labs, Jihan began spending more time in places Daehyun considered irrelevant: museums, concert halls, public parks, and schools. One afternoon, Jihan visited an art gallery in Seoul. He stood for a long time in front of a large sculpture made of twisted metal and colored glass. The artist, a young woman named Yoonju Yoon, happened to be there. "Do you like it?" she asked, not knowing who he was at first. "I find it difficult to understand," said Jihan. "It has no clear function." Yoonju smiled. "Art doesn't need a function. It's about feeling something." "Feeling," repeated Jihan. "The Vorax removed emotional responses from our biology long ago. We found them inefficient." Yoonju's eyes widened as she realized who she was talking to, but instead of being afraid, she was curious. "Would you like to try to feel something?" she asked. Jihan tilted his head. "How?" "Close your eyes and listen," said Yoonju. She took out her phone and played a piece of music, a simple piano melody that rose and fell like waves. Jihan closed his large eyes. For several minutes he stood perfectly still. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed in his face. "There was a disturbance in my neural patterns," he said quietly. "It was not unpleasant." Yoonju smiled. "That's called being moved by music. It's one of the best things about being human. I would like to experience more," said Jihan. Late that night, Lieutenant Taiho was working alone in the lab where they kept parts of Jihan's ship. His computer screen suddenly flickered, and a message appeared. "Human. Can you receive this transmission?" Taiho looked around confused. "Who's there?" "I am Technician Min Seok of the Vorax vessel. We must communicate secretly." Taiho quickly connected his secure line. "Why are you contacting me?" "There is much you should know about the collective," said the alien voice. "Not all Vorax agree with the containment policy. Some of us believe we have lost something valuable by removing our emotional capacity." "Why tell me this?" asked Taiho. "Because Jihan is changing. We monitor his neural patterns. They are becoming more like yours, more human. This has never happened before. Some of us want to study this change, not stop it." "And Commander Daehyun? He wants to recall Jihan and purge these changes from his system. Then he will recommend immediate containment of Earth." "What does containment really mean?" asked Taiho, dreading the answer. "At minimum, destruction of all spaceflight capability and limiting of technological development. At worst, sterilization of your planet." Taiho felt cold fear. "How can we prevent this?" Help Jihan. His transformation may be the key to changing the collective's views on humanity. The next day, Admiral Junseo Han arrived at the Global Security Headquarters. As head of Earth's United Military Response, he had been monitoring the Vorax ships carefully. 4 more large vessels have entered the solar system, he announced, grimly. "They'll reach Earth in 3 days. Director Sunwoo looked worried. "What does it mean?" "It means they're preparing for something," said Admiral Han. "Either protection or attack." Captain Do-yoon found Jihan that afternoon, visiting a school where children were playing music. "More Vorax ships are coming," said Do-yoon. "What aren't you telling us?" Jihan seemed troubled. "The collective is concerned about my reports. They do not understand why I find your species interesting beyond threat assessment." "And do you find us interesting?" Jihan was quiet for a moment. "I was sent to evaluate your species objectively, but I find myself experiencing things I should not. When I hear music, I feel vibrations that are not just sound waves. When I see art, my visual processors react in ways they should not." "You're starting to feel emotions," said Do-hyun. "If that is true, I will be recalled and reset," said Jihan. "The collective does not allow such irregularities." Dr. Park called an emergency meeting that evening. She had been analyzing the data from their observations of both Vorax visitors. "Jihan's neural patterns are definitely changing," she explained. "But I've discovered something else. The Vorax biology is partly synthetic. They've been replacing Organic parts with technology for so long that they're almost machines now. But not completely, added Hayun. And I think the human parts of Jihan are waking up. Can we use this somehow? Asked Director Sunwoo. To convince them we're not a threat? Maybe, said Mina. If Jihan is experiencing emotions again, he might understand what makes humans valuable in ways the other Voraks can't. Their planning was interrupted when Commander Daehyun entered the room unexpectedly. His reflective eyes scanned each human face before settling on Dr. Park. You have been studying Voraks biology, he stated. This is not permitted. We're just trying to understand, began Mina. Understanding is not required for your evaluation, said Daehyun. Counselor Jihan will return to the main vessel tomorrow for assessment. I will complete the evaluation of your species. After Daehyun left, the room erupted in worried conversation. If they take Jihan away and reset him, we lose our best chance, said Hayun. We need more time, agreed Do-hyun. At that moment, Jihan himself slipped into the room through a side door. He looked different. His movements were less fluid, more human, and his eyes showed what might have been fear. I do not wish to return to the vessel, he said quietly. Everyone stared at him in surprise. What did you say? Asked Do-hyun. I do not wish to return. I am experiencing things I never have before. If I return, they will remove these experiences. They will make me as I was. And you don't want that? Asked Hayun gently. No, said Jihan, seeming surprised by his own answer. I want to continue learning about humans, about music and art, about feelings. Then don't go back, said Taiho suddenly. That would be unprecedented, said Jihan. No Voraks has ever defied the collective. Maybe it's time one did, said Yoonju, who had been invited to the meeting by Hayun. She stepped forward and held out her hand to Jihan. Maybe it's time someone showed the collective what they've been missing. Jihan looked at her hand, then slowly reached out and took it. It was the first time he had willingly touched a human. If I stay, he said, Commander Daehyun will see it as proof that humans are dangerous, that you have corrupted me. It may hasten his decision to contain Earth. Then we need a plan, said Director Sunwoo. If you're really on our side now, help us convince the collective that humanity deserves to live freely. For the first time since his arrival on Earth, Jihan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. I will try, he said, because I am beginning to understand something important. The very things the Voraks removed from themselves, creativity, emotion, curiosity, these are not weaknesses. They are humanity's greatest strengths. The morning came when Jihan was supposed to return to the main ship. Commander Daehyun waited at the landing site with his robot guards. His patience was running out. Where is Counselor Jihan? He demanded when Captain Do-hyun arrived. He's on his way, said Do-hyun, trying to buy time. In truth, Jihan was hiding in a secure facility with Dr. Park and Hayun. The collective has sent additional ships, said Commander Daehyun. Elder Seok-jin has arrived to make the final decision on humanity's fate. Counselor Jihan's presence is required. Do-hyun felt a chill. Elder Seok-jin? Who is that? The eldest member of the collective. He has overseen the containment of 17 developing civilizations. His judgment is final. Miles away in an underground lab, Dr. Park was running tests on Jihan. The alien sat quietly while machines scanned his brain patterns. Your neural structure is changing rapidly, said Mina. The more you experience human emotions, the more your brain rewires itself to process them. Is that dangerous? Asked Jihan. Not for you, said Mina. But the Voraks might see it as corruption. Hayun studied the results on her screen. It's amazing. It's like your brain is remembering how to feel. Parts that were shut down are waking up. The Voraks were not always as we are now, said Jihan softly. Long ago we were more like humans, but we chose efficiency over emotion, logic over creativity. We thought it would make us better. And did it? Asked Hayun. We advanced technologically. We stopped fighting wars among ourselves. But we lost something too. Something I'm only beginning to understand. Their conversation was interrupted when Lieutenant Taiho burst into the room. They're looking for you, he told Jihan. Commander Daehyun has ordered a scan of the entire region, and there's something else. 5 more Vorax ships have arrived. They're positioning themselves around Earth. They're preparing for containment, said Jihan, his voice heavy with worry. If I don't return to the ship, they will take it as proof that humans have corrupted me. It will confirm their worst fears. But if you do go back, they'll just reset you and continue with containment anyway, said Taiho. Jihan was quiet for a moment. There is another option. I could speak to Elder Seokjin directly. He is old enough to remember when the Vorax still had emotions. If I can show him what I've learned about humanity. It's worth trying, said Hyun. But how? They'll reset you the moment you return. Dr. Park, said Jihan, turning to Mina. Is there a way to protect my new neural patterns? To prevent them from being erased? Mina thought for a moment. Maybe. We could create a neural shield using Earth technology. It wouldn't be detectable by Vorax scans because they've never seen anything like it. Do it, said Jihan. I will return to the ship and speak to Elder Seokjin. When Jihan finally appeared at the landing site, Commander Daehyun was suspicious. You are late, he said, and your neural patterns show irregularities. I have been conducting deep research, said Jihan smoothly. Human culture is complex. Commander, Daehyun didn't seem convinced, but he had orders to bring Jihan back to the main ship. Together they boarded Daehyun's craft and took off toward the massive Vorax vessel orbiting Earth. On the ground, Captain Dohyun, Director Sunwoo, and Admiral Han watched them go. Now what? Asked Sunwoo. Now we prepare for the worst, said Admiral Han grimly. If Jihan fails to convince the Elder, the Vorax will attack. Our weapons can't hurt their ships, said Dohyun. But Jihan said something before he left. He said we should show the Elder what humans do best. Create beauty from chaos. Aboard the main Vorax ship, Jihan was brought before Elder Seokjin. The Elder was clearly very old. Parts of his blue skin had been replaced with metal, and his eyes were now fully mechanical. But there was wisdom in his face that the other Vorax lacked. Counselor Jihan, said the Elder, his voice surprisingly gentle. Your reports on the human species have been unusual. Humans are unusual, Elder, said Jihan. They are not like other species we have evaluated. Commander Daehyun believes they are dangerous. He says they develop technology too quickly and still fight wars among themselves. That is true, admitted Jihan. But there is more to them than that. They create art and music. They feel emotions deeply. They value things beyond mere survival or efficiency. Elder Seokjin leaned forward. You speak of them with unusual interest. Commander Daehyun believes you have been contaminated by prolonged exposure. Not contaminated, Elder. Awakened. The humans have reminded me of what the Vorax once were, before we chose to remove our emotions. The Elder's mechanical eyes focused on Jihan. Show me. Jihan hesitated. I cannot explain it with words alone. You must experience it yourself. That would be unprecedented, said Commander Daehyun, who stood nearby. The Elder cannot risk contamination. I have lived many centuries, said Elder Seokjin. I remember when our people still created music and art. I will see what Counselor Jihan wishes to show me. On Earth, people waited anxiously for news. The 5 Vorax ships had formed a perfect pentagon around the planet. No one knew if they were there for protection or destruction. In Seoul, Yoonju had organized something special at Director Sunwoo's request. Artists, musicians, and dancers from around the world had gathered in a large park. They began to create together, a massive collaborative performance that combined music, light, and movement. Satellite cameras broadcast the performance to the world. And, unknown to most, a special transmission sent it directly to the Vorax ships. Aboard the main vessel, Elder Seokjin watched the human performance through Jihan's neural link. For a long time he was perfectly still. Then very slowly his mechanical hand rose to touch his face. I had forgotten, he whispered. All these centuries, I had forgotten what it felt like. Felt like? Asked Commander Daehyun, confused. To be moved by beauty, said the elder. To feel wonder. To experience art not as a collection of colors and sounds, but as something that touches your deepest self. The humans reminded me, said Jihan. They showed me that efficiency is not the only goal worth pursuing. That emotion is not a weakness but a different kind of strength. Elder Seokjin turned to Commander Daehyun. Cancel the containment protocols. The human species will be protected, not contained. But Elder, they are dangerous, protested Daehyun. Yes, agreed Seokjin, but not in the way you think. They are dangerous because they remind us of what we have lost. And perhaps that is exactly what the Vorax need. 3 days later, 4 of the 5 Vorax ships departed Earth's orbit. Only one remained, a smaller vessel that would serve as an embassy between Earth and the collective. On a hillside overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Jihan stood with Captain Do-hyun, Dr. Park, Hyun, and Lieutenant Taiho. They watched as the massive ships disappeared into the stars. Elder Seokjin has declared Earth a protected world, said Jihan. The collective will not interfere with human development. Instead, they wish to establish cultural exchange. And what about you? Asked Hyun. Will you return to your people? Jihan turned to watch the sunset painting the sky in colors of red and gold. Elder Seokjin has appointed me as ambassador to Earth. I will remain here to learn from humans and share what I learn with the collective. So you're staying? Asked Do-hyun, smiling. Yes, said Jihan, and this time his smile came naturally. I was sent to your world as a harbinger of potential destruction. Instead, I found something I never expected. What's that? Asked Mina. Oh, reminder of what it means to be truly alive. To feel wonder at a sunset. To be moved by music. To connect with others not just through words, but through shared experiences. Jihan looked at each of his human friends. The Vorax sent me here, to decide your fate, never imagining I would choose to stay. I never want to leave. As darkness fell and stars began to appear, they stood together, human and alien, looking up at the vast universe. For the first time in centuries, a member of the Vorax collective felt hope. And on Earth, humanity looked to the stars not with fear, but with the promise of friendship. What began as an evaluation of humanity's threat ended as the rediscovery of what makes life worth living. Not efficiency or power, but connection, creativity, and growth. The very things that humans had always valued most had turned out to be their greatest strength, and perhaps the salvation of an ancient species that had forgotten how to feel.